So let's talk about God from One Punch Man, who is for sure the final boss of the series, and certainly strong enough to be Saitama's final opponent. Actually, he might be a little too strong. I'm assuming that this guy, once we see like his full potential, is probably going to be like as strong as a Marvel cosmic being, because he kind of has to be, considering how strong we know Saitama is and how strong he can become. Like, if you're going to push Saitama to, going all out, you need to be that strong pretty much. So, like, who is this guy, or who is this thing? Well, to be honest, we don't really know yet, but we have kind of a good idea. So long story short, he seems to be like an interdimensional / cosmic Satan. That's pretty much what he is. And his motives aren't like fully clear, but he for sure is interested in Earth. And it seems like he wants to like take over Earth to some degree or use it in some fashion. And go figure, that's what most major villains want. But with God, it seems like it's more so less about ruling and more so about using it for like his benefit in some way. So in story time, like over 20 years ago or so, Blast, the #1 S-class hero, came across one of these cubes. And he figured out that if you like touch this cube, you're able to communicate with this being that refers to himself as God. Before we go any further, let me also clarify that he is not like God, capital G God of the One Punch Man world, or at least I'm pretty sure he's not. That would be lame if he was. He's not like the one above all in Marvel. He's just some ultra powerful demonic cosmic entity that just calls himself God. Who knows if we'll ever really find out what his real name is? I don't even think it matters. It's just this guy, he goes by God. Actually, now that I think about it, it's kind of like Saitama too. We don't know what Saitama's like real name is. Who even knows if his name actually is Saitama? But this cube, or should I say these cubes that Blast found, are essentially like the crux of God. Like, these are tied to him in some way. And like I said, there's multiple of them. And they're scattered all over the world, or seemingly. And it even seems like there's some in space too. Now, we don't know what they are, or where they came from, or why God is associated with them, but we kind of have an idea as to what's going on with them. Now, keep in mind, this is just me guessing. Could be wrong, but I think the creator of the series may have already told us like what these cubes are and why they're associated with God by like hiding it in plain sight with like a gag almost. So back in chapter 193, or at least I think it's 193. I don't know what the official numbering of this chapter is going to be, but it's the chapter where Saitama comes across these guys calling themselves the Saints and the Dragon Bones, and then he winds up fighting the cruel dragon at the end of the chapter. But these guys explain the lore of what's going on here. And I think what's going to be said here is explaining what's going on with God. According to legend, a colossal dragon once descended upon Earth and became the embodiment of destruction. In just a few days, it took countless lives and scorched all land. As a result of its actions, it became known as the Cruel Dragon. Ancient soldiers gathered together and with a great many sacrifices managed to weaken the Cruel Dragon. Sealing orbs scattered the dragon's key into 9 stones and sealed them in the shrines in various places. The duty of watching over the Cruel Dragon seals was passed on to our organization known as the Saints. Those who believe themselves to be dragonborn and are plotting to revive the sealed Cruel Dragon belong to an organization known as Deathbone. The antagonism surrounding the Cruel Dragon seals has continued for 800 years. So like I said, I think this is like explaining the truth about what's going on with God and his backstory. The Cruel Dragon is, representing God, and then the Saints are probably representing Blast and his crew. Because Blast isn't alone in his mission of overseeing these cubes and trying to get them before someone else does. He reveals that he has like a team with him of other Blast-like people who appear to be coming from different planets. And we know this for sure because, they look like aliens, but also one of them is like from Boros's race. And we know that Boros obviously is an alien, and it seems like Boros is also tied to God, because when Boros finally got bored with dominating the universe, he went to that alien seer guy and he said that if you go to Earth, or just, this planet in particular, you'll find yourself a worthy opponent. And he said that it took him 20 years to get to Earth. Remember what we said earlier, 20 years ago is when Blast first found the cube and was introduced to God, or at least around that time. So it's all lining up for sure. It seems like God sent Boros to Earth to fight Blast for him, and also probably become like his minion or something, because that's also like a thing that God does. He can like bestow power upon you. That's like the whole thing with the cubes. Like if you touch them, he decides if you're worthy or not to receive his power. If you're worthy, you become ridiculously powerful. But if you're not, then you just get turned to dust, essentially. But sorry, I was getting sidetracked there. So yeah, Blast's team, it seems to be the Saints in this equation.
Which implies that God has targeted multiple different planets in the past, not just Earth, meaning that, yeah, for sure, he is a universal threat.
Now, as for the Death Bone, I think this represents like multiple factions in the One Punch Man world, or at least what we know of like the three major antagonistic groups in the One Punch Man world, which is like the Monster Association, the Organization, and Tsukuyomi, and I guess the Ninja Village as well, because the cubes are tied to each of these places. Not so much the Organization yet, but I think it will eventually be revealed that a cube is tied to them. They're like the cyborg guys, by the way. But with the Monster Association, we saw a cube beneath it, as well as a freaking altar down there, which showed the path to God's resurrection. As we saw at the end of season 3, although it wasn't like fully explained, but in the manga it says that there needs to be like a monster born, or just a being born as strong as Orochi, to be placed on an altar to resurrect God. Then we also see that there is a cube in Tsukuyomi's test facility. This is the place that had Tatsumaki as a kid and are currently like making artificial espers. And then with the Ninja Village, we saw that they had a cube there too, beating out the top ninja candidates to see who's worthy of becoming like God's new disciple. Keep in mind that they're all not like aware of what's going on here. They just know that the cube has power and they're being told what to do with it, because that also goes back to 20 years ago when Blast was looking for these cubes. He had a partner with him by the name of Empty Void, who is the leader of the Ninja Village, but he was corrupted by the cube when they found it, and he wound up becoming a minion of God and eventually was defeated, and then he became like a good guy again recently. But anyway, now that we have the cubes out of the way, as it says here, these cubes are sealing cubes, or it says orbs here, but like the actual God cubes. I'm assuming it's like the same thing here. Like God was sealed in these cubes at some point, or maybe he was sealed in like one giant cube and it was cut into pieces. That remains to be seen. But if we're going off of the Cruel Dragon lore, in my opinion, it seems like God showed up somewhere. Maybe he showed up to Earth. Maybe he showed up to another planet. He showed up somewhere in the universe and was just being a bad guy. He was doing bad things. And then a whole bunch of powerful people came together, kind of like Blast's group, I guess, and then sealed him in these cubes, or in a cube. And in this cube, or wherever he is in like another dimension, because that's what Blast says. He says that he constantly has to keep going into like another dimension to make sure that the seal there keeps God where he is, because it like keeps weakening. So he constantly has to keep going back and forth and like repairing it or maintaining it or whatever, along with like the rest of his group. So while God is like outside of space and time or whatever, outside of the universe, he can only communicate through these cubes if you find them, or he could just like telepathically communicate with you if you're like in a right certain mind state or something. Because we saw that he was able to communicate with Homeless Emperor. He didn't have a cube. He kind of just hated humanity. He communicated with Psychos. He communicated with Garo. And also he can like impersonate people and like trick you into accepting his influence, as we saw he tried to do with Tatsumaki, as well as what he did with Garo impersonating Bang. Although Garo kind of knew what was up, but he slapped his hand away, but that was enough to make Garo freaking Cosmic Garo. So yeah, it seems like God was sealed back in the day. And since then, it seems like he's been trying to facilitate multiple ways to bring him back into existence. From the shadows, or from the interdimensional shadows, like seeding his influence to multiple paths. Via the Monster Association, the Ninja Village, the Organization, which has yet to be revealed, but I'm sure that's going to tie in there too, and Tsukuyomi. And there might even be another group too. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go into like the multiple appearances of God. And I mean that in more ways than one, because he has like multiple forms. We see him looking like ethereal kind of when he visits Homeless Emperor. And when he visits Homeless Emperor again to kill him later on, he looks like, you know, all skinless, corpsey. Then when he like appears on top of the moon right before that sequence, he looks like he has skin, I guess. And then when we see Saitama, Flashy Flash, and Monako look at him after they touch the cube under the Monster Association, peeking through that hole, he looks I don't know, like muscle tissue, or maybe that's like what he actually looks like possibly, but he's like curled up in a ball in that instance. And I think that might represent him being like trapped inside of the cube. Like that's like what his actual existence is at this point. Like that's his maybe corporeal form if he actually has one. Like it's just him bound in that cube and then telepathically going out there with his mind or whatever. I mean, I could be wrong. We have very little to go off of, but then there's actually one more time that we see him, or at least the implication that we see him. And it's after Saitama and Garo like connect serious punches and Blast is about to teleport them away. We see like the dark side of the moon, or just the other side of the moon, opposite of facing the earth. And we see like this spine in the back of it. And this is probably like God, like his bones are in there. Like he's in the moon for some reason. I mean, he is tied to the moon. I'm not going to go to the Egyptian stuff, don't worry. But the crater from Boros kicking Saitama to the moon has always represented like God's eye, like him watching, like God is always watching, observing everything. But it seems more than that. Like he's literally in the moon for some reason. So either he actually did show up to Earth, and then back in the day, there was some powerful people there, or powerful people overseeing Earth. Like maybe Blast's group was like a group that was like passed down to Blast. Like their duty was given to Blast, and then he like kept the team going or something like that. But I don't know, they did something that like stripped God in multiple ways. Like maybe his like corpse is there in the moon or something, and then like his actual like essence, like his soul or whatever, is trapped in another dimension or something like that. I don't know, it's really hard to make out exactly what's going on there, but I think we have most of the pieces here. And that also goes back to what I was saying about God's goals and like what he wants with the earth. I think he may have revealed possibly what it is, because when he gives Psychos and Orochi like the power up when they're fighting against Tatsumaki, and Psychos is like kind of different, like she has like a different kind of personality, and she starts saying like this weird stuff to Tatsumaki after she explains like God visiting her, although she's not aware that it was God. She says, "I would use this power to absorb all living creatures through these roots and fuse their spirits into a single entity. I will become the ultimate life form, the very planet itself." That could be like God's motive for it. Like he wants to use the earth to like become the earth, and then I guess become like a new being that way, and then overthrow the universe in some way. Like maybe earth is like special and he needs it to like become his ultimate self or something. Again, just guessing, could be wrong. But yeah, I think that's more or less what's going on with his backstory at this point. And as for how strong he is, I guess we can just see that through how powerful Cosmic Garo is, because like I said, Cosmic Garo slaps his hand away, and that's enough to give him that power up. And Cosmic Garo is strong enough to fight somewhat on par with Saitama at that point in the story. I mean, as we saw as the fight goes on, Saitama becomes stronger and stronger, and then so strong he just blows Cosmic Fear Garo away. But if God is just able to make someone like Garo that strong, imagine how strong God himself is. So that's what I was saying about him being like cosmic being, Marvel level strong. Like if Garo could just casually create gamma ray bursts and figure out time travel and stuff like that, God has those powers too at a much higher level. Like God, I'm just taking a guess, could probably easily destroy galaxies if he really wanted to. Like I'm sure at his full power he could probably destroy the universe. Same with Saitama, of course. So like I said, he is definitely a worthy final opponent for Saitama. And I can't imagine what the final fight will be like. Like I'm sure they're gonna have to fight outside of the universe, because they'll just destroy it if they go at each other at full power. Like they'll probably have to fight in another dimension or something, like where God is or something like that, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's pretty much it for God, at least for now. I'm sure I missed some stuff. Let me know in the comments if I missed some stuff, but that's more or less what God is. Pretty cool, pretty interesting character, at least for now. I mean, he's still pretty mysterious, so he'll be cool, you know, until he's not mysterious anymore and we know too much about him, which is usually what happens with these characters. But let me know what you thought about this in the comments, guys. If you liked it, please give it a like, and please subscribe for more One Punch Man content like this. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.